So hello and welcome. My name is Nicole Broquet, and I'm the Environmental Education Coordinator here at the Marine Resources Council. And I would like to thank you all very much for joining us through Zoom and in person for our third Indian River Lagoon Health Update. We greatly appreciate your participation and your attendance and are looking forward to sharing the report card with you. For those that are attending here in person, we are asking you to please stay seated throughout the presentation. And if you do need to get up and move around, please put your mask on. If you have your phone still connected to our Wi-Fi, please turn it off. And if you have any questions, please write them on the note cards and we will be coming by to pick them up and collect them. For those that are attending through Zoom, please submit your questions through the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. We will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. However, you can continue to submit questions while Dr. Leesa is presenting. All right. Clicker.
Now she's got it.
All right. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly introduce and encourage people to sign up for Lagoon Loyal. It is a new environmental education campaign by Brevard County that rewards people for actions that they do that have a positive impact on the lagoon. It's simple to get started. All you have to do is go to lagoonloyal.com and create a Lagoon Loyal profile. Next, you will find a list of activities that have a positive impact on the lagoon, which you can do to earn points. These can be super simple, like attending an educational workshop, just like this one, or even washing your car at a commercial car wash, or even referring a friend to become Lagoon Loyal. For the people that are attending the event today, you can scan the QR code at the check-in desk. And for those that are attending through Zoom, you can even use your camera app on your smartphone to scan the QR code currently. It will also be shown later at the end of the presentation. Once you have created a profile and started accruing points, you can exchange these points for rewards at businesses in and around the lagoon. These can be things like massages, discounts at different restaurants, or even like merchandise sales and clothing stores. All right, thank you very much for your time for Lagoon Loyal. And now I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Leesa Souto. She is the Executive Director of the Marine Resources Council, also known as the MRC, and she has been fearlessly leading us for 8 years. And she has more than 20 years of experience working to improve Florida's water quality with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, Brevard County National Resource Management Office, UCF's Stormwater Management Academy, and of course, the MRC. Her current research focuses are the groundwater impacts to the lagoon, muck management strategies, fertilizer, and alternative landscapes. She's a native Floridian, and she loves the water and exploring new ecosystems in Florida and around the world. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Leesa Souto.
Yay. Thank you.
Here you go.
Hey, everybody. It's good to have you here in the Lagoon House, and it's good to have you online visiting with us today. Wish you were here in person and we could all shake hands and embrace and enjoy each other's company. But soon, I trust, we will be in the same room again together. Today, I want to welcome you to the third annual Indian River Lagoon Health Update or Report Card. MRC's mission is to empower people with knowledge, and this report card really is a perfect example of what we're trying to accomplish, which was getting science into the hands of the public so the public is informed enough to go and advocate and educate and share their knowledge with their friends, families, and our political leadership so they make the right decisions. I'm really, really fortunate to have an awesome team of people that I work with. Today, we've got Kate Zender, who is our development director, who checked you in this morning. Nicole Broquet, who you just heard from, who's been working closely with Brevard County on Lagoon Loyal program. She's our Zoomologist and will be assisting with the technical work with the Zoom, and she'll also be handling questions. If you have questions online, put them in the chat. Is that right, Nicole? And those of you here in the room, if you can write them on your cards, we'll come around and collect them so everybody hears the question and we can address them at the end of the presentation. Katie Savoya is in the back. She's our Science and Restoration Director. So she's our mixologist today because, you know, science and mixology kind of go together. So she'll be coming around and clearing your tables and making sure you have drinks that you need, and serving Cara Woods in the back is the one who brought the delicious food out for you. And we have to, of course, recognize our friend Bruce over at Coastal Crab for making delicious lunch today. Coastal Crab is right past the Honda dealer. Make it right down that side road. It's right there on the right-hand side, just right up the road. And they're a young, new family business, and we should support them as much as we can. So I think I got everybody. Did I get everybody? I want to recognize Bill Cox is in the audience. He's one of our board of directors, and I have to send out a big thank you to our board for supporting us and supporting this project. So my name is Leesa Souto, and I'm the executive director of MRC, and it's been my pleasure to work here for the past 8 years, mostly because of you, the community, who has been so actively engaged in trying to bring our lagoon back to a healthy system again. You know, we can't do it ourselves. No one single institution can do it ourselves. Nonprofits, government, professionals, you know, we all have a role to play, and each individual has a role to play in bringing our estuary back. And it's, you know, truly my delight that I get to work beside you, our community, every day to try to make our estuary a healthy system. So is the lagoon getting better? Which is really the reason why MRC wanted to do this annual report card, is we knew that we had a system that was in bad shape. 2016, we think, was probably one of the worst years on effort. If you look through the data, it was. And we know from experience that once you hit rock bottom, there's only two ways you can go, right? Up or sideways. So which parts of the lagoon are getting better and which parts of the lagoon are kind of staying the same? So that's what we're trying to figure out. There's a couple of other aha moments that we'll talk about tonight, and then we're going to accept questions at the end. Because we've got people in the webinar, we want you to write your questions so we can read them so they can hear them as well. And I'll repeat them if we need to, but please do write your questions down when you have one, and we'll collect them up so we can get everybody's questions answered. All right, so the Indian River Lagoon Health Update came out of an assembly that MRC did in 2014. We assembled 100 delegates representing 33 different stakeholder groups that included agriculture, real estate, academia, government. They sat through 2.5 days of facilitated workshops to answer the question, you know, what can we do as a community to act to improve the Indian River Lagoon? 2014 was the year after we experienced our first major manatee die-off. We lost 75 dolphins that year. The diving birds were almost literally falling out of the skies and dying. We had just gone through 2 years of our first super bloom. We called it the super bloom because we didn't know they were going to happen every year. And, you know, 2014, everybody started to get really, really activated about what can we do for the lagoon. This was the #3 priority action, was to come up with a report card that would engage the public in a meaningful conversation about, is the lagoon getting better or worse? This piece of information, the printed copy, was taken up to Tallahassee the following session, and it's what prompted the millions of dollars that are now being funneled down to the Indian River Lagoon area to support wastewater infrastructure projects. It helped Senator Mayfield support the need for the Clean Waterways Act. It helped redefine what the, you know, the changing or the not changing of regulatory standards by showing the state, you're not meeting the standards you have. You don't need to be changing these standards right now. Why don't you keep going with the ones you have and see if you can ever get there? It's an easy reference to understand. The scores you're going to be looking at are the same scores you would have seen in grade school. 0 is a very bad grade. 100 is a very good grade. And it's really, in essence, it's taking the state agency water quality and seagrass data, and it's comparing it with the state agency's regulatory targets for those same parameters. So it's you know, how are we doing, state agencies? The lagoon itself, just to remind everybody, it's a very long linear system, 156 miles. It has a climate change boundary right through the middle of it. We've got warm temperate in the north, and we've got subtropical in the south. So it's got a lot of diversity, not only biodiversity, which you probably heard about, the most biodiverse estuary in North America, or at least it once was, but that is because of the diversity of the system itself. You've got very shallow water up in the Mosquito Lagoon, and the average depth is 4 feet. You've got exchanges and inlets throughout. There's 5 open inlets, and then there's Port Canaveral. So all of these things are playing a role in the ecosystem and how it is functioning, its internal ability to deal with inputs, and its resiliency. It's a very resilient estuary, and we're lucky for that. The indicators that we look at with the report card are really basically the only thing the state is regularly monitoring for. That was born out of a process called TMDLs, Total Maximum Daily Loads is what it stands for. This is a stormwater regulation process, came down from the US EPA. The assumption was, and still is, most of your direct point sources, as they're called, your direct discharges coming from industry and wastewater are being dealt with at the permitting level, and that this program is supposed to deal with non-point sources. Everything else is coming off of the land and down the storm drain. So this is pretty much when they passed the TMDL program in Florida. I don't know, it's been in my career time, so about 20 years ago or so. They started to only focus monitoring on these 5 parameters. So keep that in your cap. The 5 parameters are the 2 nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus. TN is total nitrogen, TP is total phosphorus, which fuel, they act as a food source for algae, which is measured by chlorophyll A, which is a color pigmentation. And then when algae increases, it's going to increase turbidity. Turbidity is how unclear the water is. So the higher the turbidity is, the more unclear the water is. And then these things, when this happens, it's going to impact seagrass because seagrass requires light. It lives on the bottom. It requires light to grow. So if there's unclear water, light can't reach the bottom, seagrass dies. So they all relate to each other. But is it telling the whole story of the lagoon? And that's the question I'm going to leave you with today. It's based on the regulatory standards. What we're doing with the report card, if you see water quality scores, so we're scoring them on all these parameters. So the total nitrogen actual condition out there in the water against the total nitrogen regulatory target would be compared for the total nitrogen score. In a lot of the charts, we roll the scores from these 4 water quality indicators up into 1 water quality score. That's an average, and they're equally weighted, in case you're curious about that. Equal weighting average of these 4 things is the water quality score. Seagrasses alone are your habitat quality score. The lagoon, as I mentioned, is very diverse. It has regulatory targets specific to 10 different regions. The Mosquito Lagoon has 3 regions, 3 different sets of regulatory targets for those parameters. The North IRL has 1 set. Banana River has 1 set. The Central IRL has 2 different sets. And then the South IRL has 3 different sets of regulatory targets. We've got 2 different water management district agencies, St. John's on the north and South Florida on the south, excuse me. And so we've got, a bunch of different kind of regulatory actions going on. What we wanted to do with the report card was take those offsets, standardize it into a score from 0 to 100. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Any score of an 80 that you see or anything that's in green is where the actual condition is meeting the regulatory target. Everything is about to be on the website. Everything meaning all the regulatory targets are going to be out there. All the regions, the TN and TP values and scores. I'm not going to show you all of that today. It's a little too much. So it's on the website if you want to drill deeper. It's out there. So just quickly again, going through these regions, we added 11 tributaries since the last time I was before you all. We've got all starting up in the Mosquito. There's 3 different Mosquito Lagoon regions. The first tributary appears here at the northernmost end of the North Indian River Lagoon. Turnbull Creek drains Turnbull Swamp. This is actually the southern end of Volusia County. Oak Hill is up in here. Big Flounder Creek is right here in the North IRL. And then Banana River doesn't have any tributaries. And then down here, we've got Horse Creek, the O'Galley River, and Crane Creek tributaries, which have been added to the report card. They continue on over here in the Central Indian River Lagoon North, which goes from the Melbourne Causeway. It's kind of what we're seeing right here, Central Indian River Lagoon, from about the Melbourne Causeway down to the Brevard County line is Central IRL North. The entire Indian River County is Central IRL South. And then we go down here to the South Indian River Lagoon, which includes St. Lucie County. And then that's divided, Martin encompasses about half and half of the Central IRL Central. And then the South IRL South is way down there, Jupiter Inlet, and we're looking at the Loxahatchee River as our tributary. The tributary that is really getting the worst impact in the lagoon is the St. Lucie Estuary. The C44 is where the Lake Okeechobee contaminated water has historically come into this south prong of the St. Lucie River, and that's where it dumps all of that blue-green algae, and you hear about the phosphorus concentrations, and that horrible sludge that comes out of Lake Okeechobee comes in right through the C44 canal into the South Fork and then out into the Atlantic Ocean. Starting from the north, we've got the Mosquito Lagoon. Like I mentioned, 3 different areas. If you've ever been up there, they're very, very different, very different. The Mosquito Lagoon is a fascinating place. North, central, and south. North includes an inlet. The Ponce Inlet is up here, and that's, encompasses pretty much the northern end of the Mosquito. And then the south is connected to the North IRL by the Barge Canal, which is right about in here. And that is very important because the super bloom, for example, actually started in the South Mosquito Lagoon, but it managed to get into the lagoon proper through the Barge Canal and then work its way down into the Banana and so on. So that we've got connections between these water bodies. And what's really curious and very, very curious is why are so many blooms starting in the South Mosquito Lagoon. So the Mosquito Lagoon, I'm going to show you diagrams that look like this. This is the years of data that we have at the bottom, starting in 1996, all the way to 2019 at this point. And then the green line on every single one of these graphs is the regulatory target line, so that the score is 80. And then these are scores. So the solid blue line is going to be the water quality score, and the dotted blue line is a trend line that is drawn by Excel. So the blue line are the actual annual median data for water quality in the North Mosquito Lagoon. And you can see it goes up and down, which is typical. The trend line, it's what tells the story of, is it getting better or is it getting worse? So this is 1. I'm going to show you 10, and you'll start to get a sense of my answer when everybody says, is it getting better or is it getting worse? I, as the ecologist, say it depends, which it does, and you'll see why it does. It depends on where you are and what the situation is. There is no seagrass monitoring in the North Indian River Lagoon because historically the temperatures have not allowed seagrasses to grow up there. We know we're expecting a northern migration of climate to move to the north and things to warm up. We may see seagrasses in the future, hopefully. Mosquito Lagoon Central is, we've got 2 lines because we do have seagrass monitoring in the Mosquito Lagoon Central. So you're going to see the 2 lines now on all the other graphs. So up here again is our 80 is our regulatory target. The blue line is going up and down. That's water quality over time every year. And then this is the seagrass line, which is like an orangey brown. And look at the trend. So the trend is water quality is pretty steady at about a C in the Central Mosquito Lagoon, and habitat quality is declining over time. Mosquito Lagoon South, which has historically been a very rich seagrass area of the lagoon. It still is. Look at this line up here. So the trend line for seagrasses in the South Mosquito is actually above the target for the South Mosquito. So that's great. It's been a lot higher in the past. Water quality is going up and down. Water quality is declining in the South Mosquito Lagoon, even though the habitat quality is maintaining itself. And one of the curious things about this particular area is that there are scientists up at NASA studying it to make sure the seagrasses can survive the manatee population. The manatees are starving throughout the lagoon because of lack of foraging. So they're going into the Mosquito to forage for seagrasses. And there was some concern that the seagrasses were going to decline to the point where they were not going to be able to recover. And you can see there has been a decline, but this is a leveling out. So as with most things that naturally occur through the evolutionary chain, manatees and seagrasses will sustain each other. So there's our manatees, and they're somehow surviving. We did lose about 1/4 of the population in 2013 in the Indian River Lagoon, but they're still surviving, especially if you have any plants that are growing over your seawall. I see them feeding on grasses and shrubberies now more. Banana River Lagoon is a sad, sad story. Wait till you see the charts on this one. But this is a single region, has one set of regulatory criteria. It extends from the north up here through the Barge Canal. It's connected. It extends from the North Banana River up here in KSC and the Patrick Air Force Base and down through Cocoa Beach and comes down to the Dragon's Point. Oh, okay. And then here's where we see the charts, and it's just, you know, the I guess cool thing about this chart is that the up and down of water quality and seagrass kind of go along together, although the seagrass lags. So this is kind of what we expect to see. We expect to see if water quality goes up, seagrasses go up, water quality goes down, seagrasses go down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And then I guess seagrasses just kind of got exhausted here at the end. Water quality went up and seagrasses were like, no, we're done. So the 80, you know, they were actually above regulatory targets there for several years, even in the Banana River Lagoon. You know, I think we're all asking ourselves what on earth happened in 2009, which was the first super bloom. But things have just gone precipitously down since then, and our trend lines are pretty severe in the Banana River. Through the scores up here so you can get an idea of what score charts look like and whether or not you ever want to look at these again. But this is what I talked about, 0 to 100. 100 is good, 0 is horrible. There are zeros here, and then the reds and greens. So it makes it easy from any distance, even if you can't see the numbers, you can see the colors, right? You can see like this big swath of green during these years from like 2003 to 2008. And then things just kind of start to get red. Across the top here, in case you can't read the columns, this is our water quality index. So this is the average score of these parameters. Chlorophyll A is the second column. That would be the measure of algae in the water column. Total nitrogen is the third one. Total phosphorus is the fourth one. Turbidity, which is how unclear the water is over here. And then all the way on the end, we've got habitat quality, which is the seagrass score, and those are seagrass transects. They're the transects, data collected from transects, where we've got zeros for seagrasses in 18 and 19. The other thing that's interesting here is you see more green and yellow under nitrogen than you do phosphorus. You see a lot more dark oranges. Those warmer colors mean it's worse. All right, Indian River Lagoon North. So this is up Titusville, down to the Melbourne Causeway. It's a single region. It includes 4 tributaries. And as I mentioned before, it's connected to the Banana River. And up here, just like in the South Mosquito Lagoon, we've got some really long retention times, meaning that water that goes in there stays in there, almost like a lake. Things don't move out very quickly. This is a map I wanted to explain really quickly. So what you're looking at on the maps, and there's a lot of these on the website, is the dots are the sampling locations. So you can just look at a region and know how many places it's being sampled and where it's being sampled. And then the color of the dot is going to be just that sampling location's average for the year. The regional color is the average of all the sampling locations. These dots up here, like Turnbull Creek and Big Flounder, the red dots, those are the tributary itself. So you will see, as you look through maps, especially on the website, and you start exploring which tributaries are contaminating the lagoon, which this is an odd one because it drains a swamp, and which ones aren't. So I think Horse Creek down here is green. It's coming in clean. So it's not contributing to contamination in the lagoon. But the tributaries are going to tell the tale. The tributaries are going to tell the story of project efficacy, you know, what things are working and what aren't. The lagoon is very buffered. The lagoon is going to take a long time before we're going to see any major change, but the tributaries all respond almost immediately. Oh, there's our tributaries. So what we saw in the north, this is the proper northern Indian River Lagoon. Here's our, you know, they actually exceeded their regulatory targets a couple times back then in the 2006s to 2008s. We were so happy. We thought we'd saved the lagoon. We were like, done. And then it's like, then the super bloom, and it's been that ever since. But water quality. So even though this up and down, and like we've been here watching the severe change in the lagoon, right? Up and down, severe changes from a score of a 40 to a score of a 75, right? I mean, you'd be happy if you got your test from a 40 to a 75. Still, put a trend line through it. There hasn't been any significant change in water quality over 25 years. I know it's crazy, but it is statistics. The trend line, however, for the seagrasses is obviously declining. So even the water quality, according to those 4 parameters, is not changing. Seagrasses are changing. This is the tributary scores, and this is their, what's neat about these, like I mentioned, is you can see which ones are polluting and which ones aren't, and you can also see if they respond to each other. So if it looks like they're the same score, you know, then you figure like Turnbull Creek in the North IRL, either there's a station really close to Turnbull Creek, or Turnbull Creek and the IRL are exchanging water a lot. And it's a tiny little tributary at the far northern range, so it would be tough to say that Turnbull was having a major impact on the lagoon proper. More likely the northern Indian River Lagoon water quality is having a major impact on Turnbull Creek. But big flounder, super contaminated, why? So then you can start, you know, when you drill in, right, that's when you can start to look up the creek at the watershed. What's happening up there? Is there a community up there that needs to have their septic tanks retrofitted? Or, you know, do we have an aging waste dump somewhere that needs to be dealt with? So on. The tributaries tell the story, really. The Ogallie River is very much its own thing. It's got its own water quality issues, and they're not necessarily related to the lagoon. Central Indian River Lagoon has two regions, north and south. Remember, Central Indian River Lagoon North is what we're looking at right here. It goes from the Melbourne Causeway all the way down to the Indian River County line. And then the south central goes from the Indian River County south line down the St. Lucie County line. So it's kind of easy to remember the Central Indian River Lagoon South, because that's the entire Indian River County. So the Indian River County people will know that they're always going to be that region, and they have their own regulatory targets. So the Central Indian River Lagoon has 4 tributaries, again, Crane Creek, Turkey Creek, my favorite, Goat Creek, and then the St. Sebastian River has got a north prong and a south prong, and an estuary, which is the body of water that's kind of connects it to the lagoon. And this is what the central IRL looks like. It's another one, and we look at the severity, whoops, where did it go? The severity of that trend line. So water quality is actually improved, it's gotten better in this area, and yet we still have a major decline in seagrass. So seagrass exceeded the targets in 2007 and 2008, and then it just nosedived. This is what it looks like with the tributaries. This is the central IRL North, and then Crane Creek and Turkey Creek and Goat Creek. And I guess I should bring to your attention the missing data. These are years that those tributaries were not monitored. And you'll see in the south end of the lagoon that there are years starting in 2012 in particular that an entire region stopped being monitored. So why has the state stopped monitoring the system that has just taken a major turn for the worst? This is, I've done some of these plots just to show, you know, looking at the tributaries and how they relate to the proper, you know, what goes up and down together, you know, they're obviously influencing each other somehow. So what's cool about this grouping is how they're all the same. They're very, very similar, these 3 tributaries in the Central Indian River Lagoon North. Central Indian River Lagoon South, this is our Indian River County part. We've got, you know, a similar situation. We've got water quality improving pretty tremendously over time. We made some major exceedances of targets some years, and still a seagrass decline, still. And this is with an inlet, right? Everybody's like, let's put in an inlet, it'll solve everything. They've got one, they still have no seagrass. So what's going on with seagrasses that's not being explained by those 4 parameters? That's the only thing we pretty much monitor for. Seagrasses. This is the comparison, Central IRL South. You can see all that green, they're doing well. Sebastian Estuary, Sebastian is more contaminated than the lagoon in that area. Sebastian River also, look at all of the lack of monitoring in the Sebastian. Okay, South Indian River Lagoon, this is that section down there in St. Lucie County, all the way down to Palm Beach County. And the exciting tale here, of course, is the horror that happens every time they discharge Lake Okeechobee water into the St. Lucie Estuary, which they're doing right now, by the way. So we've got the county line up here, it goes all the way down to Jupiter. There are 3 tributaries. Taylor Creek is tiny up here. Then you've got the St. Lucie, and then the Loxahatchee is clear down to Jupiter Inlet area down at the bottom. St. Lucie, it's the south fork of the St. Lucie that the C-44 canal connects it to Lake Okeechobee. So it'll come in right here, and it'll be the South Fork. So when you see the scores, you know the impact is to the South Fork. All right, so the South Indian River Lagoon North is above the St. Lucie estuary. It starts at the Martin County line and goes down to the St. Lucie Inlet. And this is what the water quality and seagrass looks like there. And I think what's really interesting here is water quality and seagrasses have never been close together. And they don't really reflect each other, right? So this goes up and down and this one goes down and up. You know, there doesn't seem to be much of a correlation at all. And then of course this goes up and this just drops in 2017. And this part of the lagoon is right above the St. Lucie estuary. And normally when a discharge comes into the St. Lucie and it enters the lagoon down there, it makes a right. It heads south and it goes out the inlet. So they're going to be getting, this little blip in water quality right here was the lost summer as they describe it, the summer where they discharged for 350 consecutive days, 800 acre feet of contaminated Lake Okeechobee water, and it showed up as a blip in their water quality, in the state's water quality monitoring. The seagrasses, however, took a major dive. The lost summer was 2016. So this is what it looked like down there. Blue-green, they had algae that's blue-green. We've got like red now and pea soup. They have the blue-green algae, which is toxic. It has microcystins in it, which is a nervous toxin and causes neurological damage. And it came in from Lake Okeechobee. 843,000 acre feet of water was released into the St. Lucie estuary that year. That's enough to flood the entire Martin County with a foot or actually 2 feet of water, because I think that's about twice the acres of Martin County. So, just tremendous amount of water gets dumped into there. It looks like this, and this is going out into the Atlantic. So again, making a point about, do we really want to connect a contaminated lagoon to our precious Atlantic Ocean and kill the nearshore reef and our tourism revenues associated with the beach? Maybe not. The South Indian River Lagoon north here, and with the St. Lucie, Taylor Creek is on the end, but this is pretty much the St. Lucie, and here's the South Fork, and here's that lost summer, 2016, started to decline, but really the South Fork water quality has not ever been good. North Fork has not been too great either. The South Indian River Lagoon North, however, has got all these beautiful scores, green, meeting and exceeding standards. But what the story tells us here is that where they're monitoring is really key. If the monitoring locations and where they're taking these regular samples just happens to be right outside the plume that's coming in from Lake Okeechobee, then guess what? They're not capturing that impact at all. And I would argue that they're not really capturing it with those 4 parameters, but we'll get there. South Fork is where it comes in. So the South Indian River Lagoon Central is where, so it comes, this is kind of the St. Lucie up here, and it comes in and it makes a right, and it impacts this part also. St. Lucie Inlet to Hobe Sound, which is a beautiful area of the lagoon. But water quality here has been gorgeous. It's like whenever I get depressed, I drive south and I see how beautiful their turquoise water is, but they have no seagrass and they're losing their fisheries. So it's not the solution. So them having nice water quality, and here's the lost summer is just a blip because we're looking at geometric means. And like I said, the monitoring locations, if you've got one location, right outside of that, if you've ever been down there during the discharge, it almost looks like a river inside the blue, like a river of brown. It's the trajectory of that discharge is so localized that the fish are jumping to get out of the way of it, in front of it and on either side. And it's just this river of sludge in this beautiful turquoise clear water. It's horrifying. There's a good reason the people down there get so angry. But the seagrasses, yeah, none, zeros for years. And then they just started starting to document specific species are coming back. That's the lost summer. So like I said, it's just kind of a tiny little blip in the water quality, but look at the decline in seagrass. So, the premise of the whole TMDL program was that if we address those 4 water quality parameters, seagrasses are going to come back. And I think, as we're entering the second phase of the BMAP, which is the management portion of that, this isn't looking good. This isn't looking like this is working, that addressing TMDLs, which now our municipalities and counties have been doing for years, is going to bring our seagrasses back. But who knows, maybe. Let's hope. South Indian River Lagoon South is that portion that goes all the way down to Loxahatchee. There's a lot of good to be said about this area, so let's look at something good. So the water quality here is awesome. It's so good, in fact, they decided to stop monitoring it. So that's another great thing. It's like, everything's good, let's stop looking, Did you ever do that, like with your kids? That works great. Yeah, when they're being good, stop watching them. See how that works for you. Seagrasses continue to decline. And then we've had this major, reduction here, but now they're not monitoring for water quality. So we don't know why. Why did this happen? I don't know. We'll never know. Can't go back in time and monitor the water and see if there was a similar reduction in water quality. So everything is actually really great down here in the Loxahatchee River. They have a beautiful place you can go and visit and see what awesome work they're doing. Got a great monitoring network set up, and the Loxahatchee has looked awesome. It's exceeded its regulatory targets for the entire period of our data set. 23 years, Loxahatchee River has been green and doing great, and it's not because it's in the middle of nowhere. It actually, this is Palm Beach. There are people living here, and somehow the Loxahatchee has managed to keep itself clean. So what are they doing right? Maybe we need to go down and find out. Okay, the next series of slides are maps. And these, I've got maps for 4 years, 16, 17, 18, 19. And on the left is the water quality score of those 4 parameters averaged together. And then on the right is the habitat quality score. And then as I click, it'll go through a new year and both sides will change, and you can kind of see how things change over time. So we're starting here in the year 2016, which is, like I said, we probably hit rock bottom at that point, or at least I thought we did. And we thought we can, we can only go up from there. So again, left is water quality, right is seagrass scores. So now we're looking at 2017, we saw an improvement, right, in water quality. Things got brighter, that's good. Not much of a change over here, except in the Mosquito Lagoon. And then 2018, again, Banana River's looking horrible, but everything else got a little tiny bit worse. And then 2019, this is about the same, and this is about the same, except the Mosquito Lagoon South actually recovered seagrasses at a time when it was probably being, the seagrasses were being herbivized, what's that word? Eaten by manatees an awful lot, but it's sustaining its own. Central and South IRL, same thing. Unless you guys want me to go through those maps again, it's kind of fun to see the colors change, which I can do. South, water quality on the left and habitat quality on the right. And you can see the scores too, if I forgot to point those out. Sometimes you don't notice a color change, but you can see a score change. 2017, they're always green down there. I don't know what they're complaining about. This is where Lake Okeechobee would be coming in. So actually, let's go back to 2016. This last summer, they have an orange dot there. It's like they never have red. Yellow dot in 2017, yellow dots down here in 2018. Up here starts to get a little worse. Seagrass is just ridiculous. I don't think anything changes on that side at all. It's just red and it stays red. 2019 improvements. All right, so what did we find in all of this? Water quality trend is steady, so it's either going up or sideways. So for the most part, water quality is staying about the same or improving in some areas. It's not meeting regulatory targets pretty much across the board, and seagrasses are declining everywhere. Even the water quality is supposedly staying about the same. So what can we do about it? I think that we need to be looking at other things besides those 4 parameters. I think that we need to start looking at things like herbicides and toxins that are out there in the lagoon. We need to be looking at salinity values changing over time. Hard to set a salinity target. DO, the reason we are monitoring for DO, we're not addressing it through regulatory targets because we're not monitoring DO in a way that it can be used to compare with the regulatory targets. DO has a diurnal cycle, so you need to sample it more than once a day. And then this is let's save the best for last because I got to get on my soapbox about bacteria. Especially now, considering the public health situation we find ourselves in, we do not have regular continuous ambient monitoring in the lagoon for bacteria. We've got bacterial monitoring happening where we have shellfish, and I'm happy to hear that there are shellfish farms starting up again down around Sebastian, which is great. I mean, we were once one of the most productive shell fisheries in the country, in the lagoon, and that's all collapsed. It's good to hear that shell fishery, at least shellfish, farming is starting back up again. Those areas, they will do regular bacterial testing because they don't want us eating shellfish. They also will do regular bacterial testing along the Atlantic in areas where there's recreational use of the ocean. But for whatever reason, the state and the Department of Health are not regularly testing the lagoon. They don't think it's a recreational area. We're fortunate that we have nonprofits like Surfrider and nonprofits like the Clean Water Coalition down in Indian River County, and nonprofits like MRC would really like to contribute more to the bacterial testing in the lagoon, who are taking this on to let, and Surfrider in particular has this Blue Water Task Force. Blue Water Task Force, you can Google it and check it out, and they will sign up and they'll send you a report and let you know what's going on with bacterial numbers in the tributaries where a lot of us are recreating in the lagoon. You know, I'm sorry, state, you may have determined that nobody recreates out there, but I'm here to tell you that they do and we do. And the tributaries in particular are very problematic. That's where it's coming in, and that's where it needs to be addressed. Toxins, you know, nobody says there are, not only are we not, I mean, there are things called emerging contaminants. There's a whole group of them. I mean, it's pretty much like anything that EPA hasn't figured out how to set a standard for yet is just called an emerging contaminant and stuck in a box of we'll deal with that someday. And there are a lot of them, and we're not monitoring for them because we don't even know what those levels are supposed to be. But an example is PFAS, right? We've got these PFOA and PFAS contaminants that are being addressed in the lagoon, and we know it's out there ambient in the lagoon itself, and nobody's monitoring for it. So, and if they are, they're sure not sharing, right? So anybody that finds it is going to be like, put that on the shelf. Changing land development plans. So what do we need to do? Well, we sure don't need to do what we've already been doing. We need to figure out a better way to bring people into our community and expand our economic growth while not contaminating the heck out of our tributaries and our lagoon. So we have to figure out a way to build a different way. You know, maybe honor the comp plans that were developed and approved by the state. That might be a good start. Low impact development, you know, trying to incentivize the use of development techniques that encourage water to rain out of the sky and sink into the ground instead of being channeled down over a bunch of impervious surfaces into a storm drain that's going to just discharge it into the lagoon or into a canal untreated. So figuring out a different way, and it can be done, and it has been done, and it needs to be accommodated for developers to take it on, of developing a different way. Stop polluting. So we can just stop polluting. And I'm going to talk more about that. In fact, if you stop polluting now, you can get coupons to get rewards at businesses. So you should, if you were just thinking about doing it, but you weren't sure, now's your chance to do it. Get your coupon for the massage. That's what I'm going to get, the massage. I'm going to sign up because you know I'd get at least 10 massages for all the stuff I do. All right. So what do we want to do? MRC, we want to help cultivate, isn't that funny? That's kind of a pun. Bacterial testing. Oh, never mind. We wanted to try to build capacity of the nonprofits who are doing it now to enable more bacterial testing to be done. There is equipment that can be purchased. There's just kind of coordinating volunteers who are willing to do it. We've got Lagoon Watch Network with 60 volunteers locally. We can, ask them to collect additional tests for bacteria testing. We need to figure out a way to coordinate it. We need to develop a protocol so we're doing it in a quality assured way. And I think it's worth the investment. We're going to be encouraging at the state level a return to mechanical harvesting of weeds. I want to say in about the year 2010, the state went from mechanically harvesting weeds from canals and aquatic systems to aerosol spraying them with herbicide and letting them die and sink to the bottom, which is not only a bunch of herbicide in the water, but it's also a bunch of dead plant material rotting and giving off phosphorus and nitrogen on the bottom. So plants are actually one of the few mechanisms you can use to get dissolved nutrients out of the water column, but then you have to remove them. If you just leave them there and they die, it releases them all back. Does that make sense? So it's almost like a biological remediation system, but you got to get them out of the water. So state budget cuts in 2010, of course, after the major economic downturn, they thought they were, saving themselves by going from mechanical aquatic weed removal to aerial spraying, which could have contributed to this whole nightmare we find ourselves in. And then we are going to be advocating and working, hopefully, with a community to revise and modify their local comp plans and local development codes to accommodate a different way of developing. My board is very, very active. The MRC Board of Directors is very active in communicating with city and county commissioners about developments that are being brought forth for consideration of zoning changes and density changes and so on. Of course, we're going to continue to do that as well. But what we need to do is we need to change the rules so that it's not just a zoning change that is just approved across the board. Every time somebody walks in, they want to change from a density of 6 to a density of 42. The county doesn't go, yeah, more money, tink. And that's kind of the way that goes now. So, so accommodating a different way of developing. Developers want to do it too. They're like, make it easy for me and I'll do it. They don't want to spend more money. They don't want to have to figure out how to do it. They want us to make it easy for them, and then they're willing to take it on. So we can make that happen. So those are MRC's goals. So what can we do? What can we all do? What can you do? Nutrients are still a big problem, reducing your nutrient footprint. And that means my favorite thing is stop fertilizing your stinking lawn. And this is only after one sip of wine. So stop fertilizing. It's such an easy one. When we apply chemical fertilizers, we're actually stripping the soil's natural ability to create its own fertilizer. So the more you fertilize your lawn with chemicals, the more you're stripping the natural soil's ability to create its own fertilizer. So cut it off. It's like you've just put your lawn in special care, where it's like hooked up to an IV. And that once you take the IV out, you almost have to retrain your lawn how to eat by itself again. I don't know, is that a bad metaphor? Sorry. But it's, so chemical dependency is real in lawn care. And so cut your lawn off of its chemicals. Go talk to Sally Scalera at the University of Florida IFAS. If you're in Brevard, we've got an awesome resource here. And I'm sure all of the ag extensions in every county have somebody like Sally who will tell you, how do I make my soil alive again? They will tell you how to do it. It does involve things like manure and additives to the soil. I understand some of my friends actually harvest the floating gracilaria, grind it up and put that in their lawn. I don't know about that, but it worked for him. So there are different things, amendments you can use to enhance your lawn's natural ability to break things down and create its own bacteria, and then it's going to create its own fertilizer. So that's my big thing about, it's like, just stop fertilizing. We have to fertilize the land that we harvest our food from. And isn't that enough for the planet to deal with? Why are we fertilizing lawns just for, I don't know why, so that they become a monocultural, sterile greenness that has no life of its own. But that's just my opinion. Car washing we talked about a little bit earlier, and when people don't think about, so I guess in the bigger picture, it's just whatever you do, whether you're pressure washing outside, you're washing your car, you're washing your house, if it floats down your driveway and down the street, it's a problem. So even if it's dish soap, it's got phosphorus in it. So, you know, and all those suds out there, I mean, you think that's not phosphorus? You know, it's a good chance that that's some kind of nitrogen or phosphorus that's foaming up. I mean, your dish soap and the soaps are high in phosphate and high in phosphorus. So is the lagoon. So anything that ends up going down the street and down the drain is going right into the lagoon. There's no treatment. I love this picture because it shows the kind of a trail of fertilizer from these houses on the St. Johns River that are just causing this algae bloom going down the St. Johns. Pet and animal waste, was it 100 tons of pet waste in the lagoon watershed every day? Every year. Some ridiculous amount of pet waste is released into the lagoon watershed every year. And it's not only is it a nitrogen and phosphorus problem, but it also has all the yucky stuff in it. And if you're leaving your animal waste around on the ground, it can make other dogs and cats, well, I guess cats aren't out there much, but dogs sick. So don't leave your pet waste around. Disconnecting your lawn from chemicals. I already went off on my soapbox about that. And if you're, you know, we are still organizing small groups of volunteers here. We set a limit, you have to pre-register, but, you know, get involved in MRC or another nonprofit organization. Everybody's doing some great work. So you can clean up, you can get involved in a litter reduction event, you can plant things, mangroves or native plants, monitor the Lagoon Watch program or the Surfrider bacterial testing program. I'm sure they always need more monitors. Get involved in education, advocate, speak up for what you believe in, and participate in the lagoon cause. And just by being here and participating tonight, I appreciate that you're doing that. So Lagoon Loyal, this is the little QR code that you need to scan to get credit for this event tonight. So scan it and then you can get points to get a massage or restaurant something or all kinds of cool stuff out there. So I just wanted to put that up there and thank you all. If it wasn't for the Gillespie Family Foundation, this never would have happened. They came to an event and before we even had it was just a twinkle in our eye at that point of a report card. And he believed in the vision so much that they have contributed to it every year ever since. So fortunately, you know, we've been the benefactors of a very generous family foundation. The National Estuary Program gave us the funding to do the original methodology. The scientific rigor behind this report was funding provided by the National Estuary Program. I thought you were giving me like a code, like I was getting, never mind. Northrop Grumman, another corporation that has contributed to the report card every year. Brevard Indian River Lagoon Coalition here in Brevard County has been a great supporter of this effort and contributed to it. And then right here, this conglomerate, so to speak, the City of Cocoa and the Venetian Ladies of the Lagoon. Before we even got started with this, they loved this idea. They had a house party and they raised about $3,000 at a house party to help kick off the very first report card. The City of Cocoa contributed to that. The mayor came out to the house party. It was a great, fun event. So once we're back house partying again, it's an idea for us all to have a house party and raise money for the report card. And really, it's been funded just like this. Hundreds of people donating $5, $10, $20. So everybody here participating tonight has donated money to this. Thank you for that. It's raising our thermometer from, it was at 12, almost 13,000 at lunch. Now it's at 14.5. So just from lunch to now, we've raised another $1,500. So thank you so much. This needs to be an independent analysis at this point. You know, we really don't want to accept government money. We want it to stay independent so we can call them out and ask them the tough questions of why are you not meeting your standards? Why are you not meeting your seagrass targets? You know, why are you only monitoring for these 4 things? You know, can we ask for more? Can we ask you to do more for our lagoon? This was an important piece to bring up to Tallahassee. Well, it was one of the questions that we had at lunch. I'll go ahead and address. The first one we printed and brought up there, it was right after the 2016, you know, rock bottom hit, and it helped create really a focus on the lagoon. So if you think this is a unique situation here, you're wrong. The springs are suffering from algae blooms. The West Coast is suffering from red tides and other complications from too many nutrients in the water. So to go up to Tallahassee and have a report card put us above, we've got it right here that the lagoon is in horrible, horrible shape. So it's not just a story, it is evidence that you can show that this is a score that's a indication of us not meeting our targets. We're not meeting our targets. The lagoon's in horrible shape. We need more help. And so it started the ball rolling on $100 million in legislative funding that came in that year. So it started the ball rolling for our own Senator Debbie Mayfield to pass the Clean Waterways Act, which is going to benefit the entire state, but it's also directing billions of dollars to the Indian River Lagoon over the next 10 years, if it stays in the budget, of course. So the report card has been instrumental in session. We got a $10,000 donation so that we can print it this year to bring it up to session, because Save the Manatee Club, thank you, Save the Manatee Club, thought it was that important to tell the story of the lagoon. We need this in Tallahassee. So we're fortunate that we're starting, session starting a little bit later this year, or back to normal, that we'll have time to get this printed and time to bring up to session again this year. So I think that's all I have. So thank you all for your attention. Thanks for being here. And I'm ready for any questions that you may have for me. Thank you.